I'm here. No more be right back. I'm here. Oh, I had a whole lot to do in between all these classes and I did not put up our slideshow. So give me just a second here while I go and put up our slideshow. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I had almost everything right, but I had it under the wrong name. In case you were wondering what's going on, I'm telling you. I'm letting you know what's going on. All right. Let's um let's keep moving. Or let's get started. I had 12 people here already. You're like, "Where are you, Dr. Feravich?" Hello. But I have a lot of stuff for you today. And today we are highlighting in our critical thinking classroom, we were talking about personality types, if you remember. Type A, type B, type C, and type D. I got some tea on because I needed some tea as well. So that's going to get a minute of my time in just a minute as soon as it starts boiling. It's only going to get a minute of my time, but it's going to get a minute. Not a minute, not a whole minute. So now we want to know, how does this personality type equate to good health or not good health, right? So we've been talking about a lot of things: self-esteem, self-worth, attributions, personality, all kinds of things, attachment. How does this all equate to health, right? And yesterday, what we did was we spent a lot of time yesterday on trying to understand that what is important is, or what influences the most is the environment. But if we don't understand sort of the biology, the DNA behind our personalities, I think what's going to end up happening is that people are always going to go back to personality. And whenever we say that, whenever we think personality is in charge, then what ends up happening is we think of those traits as being stable. If we think that we are smart, we don't think we're smart yesterday and tomorrow, but not when, but not Friday or Saturday, right? Let me go turn that tea off. So, whenever we think of personality, we are thinking of a stable trait. And remember, when we think of a stable trait, that is a symptom of what? Stable. When we think of our traits as being stable, that's a symptom of what? It's a symptom of pessimism is what it is, right? Because our pessimistic explanatory style says that in bad events, we see bad events as our fault, internal. We see bad events as being stable, and we see them as being global, as being in every single situation. Okay? So personality, when we see personality as being something that is stable across time, that is a pessimistic perspective. That's a perspective that says that we can't change it, that we cannot refine that. Come on, give me that refine. That we cannot change it, the personality. The more that we see personality as being stable, that means to us we can't change it. I'm going to see what's going on over here. Because my video is not moving along, and I don't know why it's not moving along. And so, okay, there we go. So, and for me to keep an eye on that video, because like I said, none of my crew showed up this morning. So I got to keep an eye on my video over there too, which is over here to you. So this is why I spent so much time yesterday and why I am an advocate of the environment. We can change our environments. Even if we are in a nasty environment, right? We can change our environment. It is one of the things that we can change. We do have some choices with our environment. If we see personality as stable, we see it as unchangeable. And in fact, personality is really quite hard to change. We will literally try and change pretty much almost anything else, especially our thinking, but not our personalities. Think about a person who is vaping, right? And they know it's bad for them, right? But they're not changing that part of their personality. They would rather change their thinking about vaping than they would to change their, which is really a behavior. The personality of vaping comes out in behavior, right? Which is very difficult to change. It's very difficult to change. We might talk about extroversion and introversion as being personality traits, but the bottom line of those personality traits is that they result in behaviors, and that's what we don't want to change, right? So if I'm an extrovert, if I'm an introvert, I don't want to change what? My behavior, introverted behavior, all right? So it's important to understand this. We have a natural tendency to see personality characteristics as being stable. In the philosophical classroom, we talked about what's called a fundamental attribution error. And what that is that we even see other people as being way more stable in their personalities than they actually are. And we see ourselves as being far less. It's called the fundamental attribution error. We're not going to get into it right now because it's just too much psychology for this classroom. We are really exploring ourselves is what we're doing and trying to find out in this classroom ourselves. So we have this natural tendency to put these stable personality characteristics on other people. We make judgments about other people in the framework of a personality. So we say that a person did poorly on a test because they're not smart, part of their personality, right? Or we say that that person didn't come to work today because they are not conscientious. Or that person volunteers because they care about people. It's the why. Why do you behave that way? Remember what we called that? We call that attribution theory. It doesn't really matter, but it does help you understand, right? That what we're trying to do is explain other people's behaviors and explain our behaviors. We tend to explain other people's behaviors using stable terms. They are smart. They are responsible. They are trustworthy. And when I say that, I don't mean they're trustworthy today, but not tomorrow, right? So we talk, especially of other people, in terms of these stable characteristics that cannot be changed. But remember what we said about those stable characteristics. Oops, did I go by it? The one that I wanted? Yeah, no. We organize our world easily. Why do we put stable characteristics on other people? Why do we say that person is responsible or irresponsible or deviant or smart? Why do we put those characteristics easily on other people? The reason why is because that helps us organize our world. I can organize the world. And why do I care about organizing the world? Why do I care about organizing the world? My ideas about the world. Why do I care about organizing the world? My ideas about the world. Do you suppose? What do you think? The reason why we so easily organize our world is so that we can predict, so that our world is not so chaotic, so that our world is not so uncertain. Why do we so easily put our outside world in a box? Why do we do that? It organizes our world to help us predict our world so it's not so chaotic. This is the reason why all of this mess that we've got with politics and with COVID going on is so destructive to our human spirit, because they have left us with an inability to be able to predict. So much so I can't even predict if I'm going to have a job, if I'm going to be able to make my payments, if I'm going to be able to see a loved one. We can't even, or be there and plan their funeral and have family show up. We can't even predict that. We can't even predict life and death anymore, right? So this is why we have, and then what do we want to do? This is important too. Our natural inclination would be to what? Put people in boxes more. Put them more in boxes. Let me get more boxes. If I get more boxes, my world will be more organized. So what do? We put people in boxes. It's us and them boxes, right? That's what we naturally do. So it is when all things are going well, right? We might stop and think and talk about all the reasons why you behaved the way that you did. But when my life is in chaos, I have no time for that. Instead, I easily put you in the box and I say, this is why you did it. I have no time for your conversation. I have no time. I get it. I get the details. Yes, here's the detail, and here's a detail, and here's a detail. And in the end, you still didn't show up for work. You still are irresponsible, right? When the world is chaos, It means it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. And when it's difficult for me to predict what's going to happen, my natural inclination is to start putting things and people in boxes. Stereotyping is what it is. Stereotyping. Remember, we said stereotyping is categorizing, is what we said. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get more and more categories so that we can predict this category does this. Extroverts will talk to me, right? But people who are disagreeable will do that. They won't talk to me. They'll argue with me. If I like arguing, I might go to disagreeable people, right? If I don't like arguing, I'll stay away from them. We put others in boxes more because we have a need to explain their behavior more than we have a need to explain our own behavior. So we don't put ourselves in boxes as much as we put other people. What does that mean? We don't put ourselves in boxes, just looking at ourselves in boxes as much as we do other people. Why do you think that is? Why don't we put ourselves in boxes? Attribution theory. Why do we put other people in boxes? So we can explain their behavior or predict their behavior. Why don't I put myself in a box? I already know why I do everything. I don't have to try and explain my behavior. I already know why, right? So I don't put myself in a box because I know all what? The environmental reasons for why I did what I did. Fundamental attribution error. Fundamental attribution error is I put everybody else in a box, put on personality characteristics, to say it more scientifically. I put everybody else in a box. I don't put myself in a box. Why don't I put myself in a box? I make attributions about other people to explain why they do what they did, so I could predict their behavior. I don't have to predict my behavior. I already know why I did what I did. Do you see the natural inclination for ourselves to give us a way out, which is an environmental reason? But somebody else, we don't give them a way out. Why? We don't as readily give them a way out. Why? Because we need to explain them. People in this category do this. People in this category do that. And who do we end up giving then more leeway to? Who do we end up not so readily putting in a box? Ourselves, I said, right? We don't put ourselves in a box because we already know the reasons why we did do what we do. Who else don't we put in a box so readily? Who else wouldn't we put in a box so readily? Who else? My sons. I know why they do what they do. So people I love, people who are close to me, people who I know. Because I can predict their behavior because I know them well, right? So I don't have to put them in a box. Why? Because I can predict their behavior better. Why? Because I know the reasons that they do what they do. I know them very well. All right, so this whole thing keeps coming back to the same thing. Are we stable in what we do? And that's due to our DNA, personality characteristics that can't be changed, leads to helplessness, right? Leads to giving up, leads to depression. Or are we under the understanding that we can master those things that we work hard to master? How do you see the world? Do you see the world as being structured by hard line personality traits? Or do you see the world as being structured by the environment, which can change from day to day? Okay? Now, let's take a look at, I'm going to go backwards a little, or I'm going to skip over health things. Today we're supposed to talk about health, but I want to I want to give you a really good look at. So here's where we left off yesterday talking about, and so I'll put these up so that you could see them. So we've got personality type A, which we used to contrast against personality type B. It was always personality type A that got labeled, right? But we had to compare it to something, so we called it personality type B. Personality type B was everything that A wasn't. So when you walk around and you say, "Oh, you're so type A." When you walk around and you tell somebody, "Oh, you are so type A." What does that mean? Do you know what that means? There you see type A right there. Ambitious, time conscientious, hard working, hard driving, right? And hostile. Remember that it is the hostility that contributes to the physical problems that we have. So we can see, and let's try and relate this to what we've been talking about so far today, so far this morning. What have we been talking about? So there is this hostility. This person is time conscious. This person is, what else do we say? Ambitious, hardworking, right? Detail oriented. That's a type A. Type A, we say anal retentive. What does anal retentive mean? I want everything in a box. Anal retentive person has all their drawers organized and their closets organized. That's what an anal retentive person does, right? Type A. Now we see where we get these phrases from, right? Where we get these terms. Anal retentive came from Freud. Type A would have been somebody who was anal retentive. So a little bit more neurotic from Freud, but that's where we get it from. Anal retentive, everything needs to be perfect in a box. And I need to control everything so that I can do what? So that I can do what? I need to control everything, type A, so that I can do what? So I could predict. Type A people put everybody in boxes, just like we said. Why? So they can predict. So they keep their world organized. Go into a type A's home, all organized, right? So they can predict. These people are not comfortable with uncertainty. They're not comfortable with uncertainty. These people are going to their grave right now, right? These people are really amping up the heart disease right now, right? Because there's all kinds of uncertainty around us. Purposeful uncertainty. Purposeful. And I say I wouldn't point the finger at government as much as I would, although some of them are in government, but some of them are in every walk of life, including, contractors and builders that are in the hands of the last president, that are deep in his pockets of the last president, all those contractors and builders. So creating this world of chaos is going to take down these type A personalities. Why? Because the hostility is going to rise. Why is the hostility going to rise? The hostility is going to rise because these individuals need control and they don't have it. So they get angry. I can't predict what's going to happen. Take a look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk, during COVID, got so mad, he basically said, F you, I'm opening up my plant. I don't care what you have to say or do. So hostility, open hostility, for what reason? For the lack of control. Now, I get it. I totally get it. I'm not saying that he's a bad person for doing it. I'm saying he's type A. That's what I'm saying. Elon Musk, type A. Ask him. He'll tell you. He'll tell you. Like I've asked him. Compared to type B, compared to type C, suppress without necessarily explosions, but maybe explosions. Typically, probably more of a weeping, sobbing explosion for type C, cancer. Remember type C, remember the health outcome, cancer. And then we looked at type D personality, and the overriding characteristic for type D personality is that these individuals are cynical. So you see hostility, but that's how is type D then different than type A? Hostility is type A. Doesn't mean it's not other types. Just means it's defining type A. What is defining type D? What's defining type D is cynicism. That these individuals are pessimists. These individuals see the world as a terrible place, as always trying to get at them, and it's stable. It's global, but this one, it's not due to me. But it's not due to me. It's due to outside factors that I have nothing to do with and cannot control. So again, this person still has a feeling of learned helplessness. This type D personality does have a feeling of no control. But the type D personality says it's not due to me. It's due to everybody else. Everybody. My dog is against me even. My favorite Aunt Karen is against me even, right? All of these people are against me. So that is the defining characteristic, the overriding defining characteristic of type D personality. Okay, and then we talked about these helpful hints here. I think we talked about them. Okay, folks, I lost my glasses is what I did, and I'm going to need those. But let's go ahead. So speak out, but again, speaking out is not the key factor. Sometimes you can speak out. We need to have a voice, and we need to feel that we have a voice. So sometimes having a voice when we have no voice at all, when we know we don't have a voice, might be to write things down. So speaking out doesn't always have to mean that we are yelling at the top of our lungs. And certainly we would not find that characteristic of introverts, right? So an introvert might be able to speak out, like I told you in the movie Precious. She got to speak out. How? By writing her thoughts down. Relax if you are sick. I don't think I went through these. Relax if you are sick. Why? Because your body needs to rejuvenate. We know that our bodies rejuvenate when we sleep. It's one of the reasons why we are so emphatic in the healthcare profession about getting 8 hours of good sleep. Now, I'm of the belief that it doesn't have to be uninterrupted. I think you can take a good nap and then get 5 hours of sleep. And I mean a good nap, I mean maybe a good 2-hour nap is what I mean. And then you would only need, 5 hours of sleep that night, or 6, whatever. So make sure so relaxing when you're sick helps your body repair itself in the same way that sleep helps our body repair itself. When you relax and you're sick, you are likely taking a nap like your body needs. Small stressors in maritable arguments can increase killer T cells. Now, this is, I put that whole research conclusion there. And the reason why I put the whole thing there is to hone in on the one specific example, but then elaborate on other examples that we've talked about. For example, like the electric shocks on the mouse's tail or the rat's tail, right? Made that rat more diligent, going through the maze even when there's obstacles, right? So we said small stressors, that zapping of that rat's tail was beneficial for that rat to be more diligent. We know grit is built on stressors, right? Smaller stressors at first, so that when we get to the larger stressors of owning a home or whatever it is, we know how to handle, we will rise to the occasion, right? We will overcome. We will stay diligent. We will persevere, right? We will be tenacious, have tenacity, right? Okay. So in this then specific example, when couples did this little debate dance, and now I'm sure that you're all aware of what I'm talking about, but let me say that men do this all the time. I don't know what it is. They are so charged. They are so charged, aroused by getting you charged, right? They are always trying to get under my skin and have some kind of debate. I don't know. Maybe it makes them feel like some kind of champion. It's the essence of that pride where I can't feel good about myself unless I'm putting somebody else down. I think it's foreign to many females. If you really consider yourself more black and white female to more, purest as a female, I would say women, we don't do this. We don't do that. We don't have a need to start a fight with somebody just to build our pride because it's exciting. No, I don't know. I mean, I'm an extrovert, and I do not shy away from conflict, but that does not mean I seek it out. And that's what I see with our wars, with our government, with other people's government, with males driving everything. Really, the essence is pride and then competition for them, right? So no wonder so many people like a capitalistic society, right? Because men have sold them on this idea that competition is great. So it's kind of like, so this kind of sparring, light sparring that a couple would enjoy. Not one person of the couple enjoys always jabbing the other person. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this light sparring of two equals. Okay? All right. And what does that do? It actually makes us, again, like that zapping of the tail on that rat, more tenacious, persevere, really get a little bit of a charge out of our relationship. That just an extra little electric charge, a boost right there, an electric boost in your relationship. And then the last one there is that we were talking about is gender differences. Is that there are gender differences, and we can clearly see gender differences, right? That women are likely to be more type C, women are likely to be more type B, men are more likely to be type A and type D. All right, so we'll leave it at that. Now, what I wanted to do is something that I had talked about with you, which was when we started measuring personality, it was one of the very first things that we did. So people are very familiar in psychology with Freud and Freudian theory. Some people are a little bit familiar with things about behaviorism and Skinner and a Skinner box. And those are people who say the environment really has something to do with it. Behaviorists. Freud said, no, this stuff started when we were very little. So here we have this, again, the same kind of argument that I've been talking about and highlighting is DNA versus environment. Freud was a DNA person. And not only was he a DNA person, because they didn't talk about DNA back then. He really was this idea of this essence that you can't put your finger on, something that isn't, that is ephemeral. You can't put your finger on it, but this essence follows us, kind of like evolution, but evolution not in a physical way, but in a psychological way. So if you want to do a deep dive on, for example, Carl Jung, and he did these archetypes. So the concept here around Freudian theory is almost a spirit kind of thing. Spirit and essence follows you in your lineage and in our human lineage, right? At being a human, it follows us as human beings, okay? This need for attachment. So attachment theory, actually, when we talked about attachment and attaching from infants and having adult attachment, the roots of the theory are in Freudian theory. The roots of attachment is in Freudian theory. The roots are in Freudian theory. So why do we have that, the idea that we attach, and Freudian theory would be in such young ages? So he had that so right. So we sort of dismiss Freudian theory because of the psychosexual stages. Do a deep dive on it if you want to. But we dismiss Freudian theory, but he had this attachment theory right. And if we were to really do a deep dive, research, expose much more than we bothered to do attachment theory, what would those roots be? What would those roots be? Would they be roots that say you're depressed? Would they be DNA that says you're anxious? What Freud was talking about is roots of love, roots of motivation, roots of desire. That's what Freud was talking about. That's what Carl Jung was talking about. That's what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is talking about. They called them drives. We call them motivations, right? So Susan Fisk called them motivations. What were they? The bucket list. Belonging, say it with me. Belonging, understanding, conscientiousness. No, control. I'm getting the big five mixed up. Control. Did you catch that? That I said that wrong? Esteem and trustworthiness. Those are our major motivations. So where do those drives come from? We call motivation, we don't think about them as being rooted in our biology. But we think of personality as being rooted in our biology, right? We think of personality as being rooted in our biology. I got my signal going in and out over here. Saw a wonderful stop over there like this. Whoa. Don't do it again, Annette. Don't do it again, Dr. Feravich. You know it. Your face is going to get stuck like that. Only pretty faces. Am I stuck yet? Am I stuck? Am I stuck? Only pretty faces. Okay. All right. So in the early days of Freud, there was also, at the same time, personality theorists that were also coming off the ground. Now, we have concepts of personality, but we really didn't have a theorist like Freud that stood behind it, right? So one name. So you might be familiar with it, but you don't think about it as a psychological concept like you might Freudian theory, right? But it is, and it's been studied at the same time. So Freud was doing his thing in the 1930s, and Gordon Allport and others were doing their thing on personality. And what the outcome was, which is what I told you yesterday, the outcome was the big five. The big five. So what Allport did was he went to the dictionary. There's another Allport. Oh. Begins with a, I thought it was an A, but it's not an A. It is an F, I think. So I want to make sure I'm getting the Allports right, but I'm pretty sure I've got this Allport right, because the other one was a social psychologist. So Gordon Allport, what did he do? He went to the dictionary and looked up every word that was a personality characteristic. And he came up with over 4,000 personality characteristics. And then he began putting them together. So he would put synonyms together. So if you had caring, compassionate, right? all of that might go in um, openness or agreeableness. So what was he doing? He was putting together synonyms, words that were synonyms. And literally, there was then a program that was called a factor analysis that would make sure he did it right. It's like, well, how do you know how do you know that compassion goes with openness and not agreeableness or something like that, right? How do you know which one? Well, what you do is, and this is a little complicated, but what you do is you give your survey to a whole bunch of people, and the more of those words that combine that sound like agreeableness, you label those as agreeableness. And the words that combine, if compassion combines with words that sound more like openness, then compassion is part of openness. Do you see what I'm saying? And what was the sole purpose of this? Well, the sole purpose of it is to be able to see what kind of personality you have. And the only way for me to do that is to give you a survey, right? And so I needed questions on a survey. But when I'm all done with the survey, what is it going to tell me? Is it going to tell me that you have parts of 4,000 different personalities? Well, it could, right? Because you do. Because you do have parts of 4,000 different personalities, right? You have some form of compassion. You have some form of disagreeableness. You have some form of conscientiousness. You have some form of lovingness. You have some form of gratitude, whether it's large form of it or a small form of it, right? So I need to explain your personality as a psychologist to see if your personality has something to do with why you've got a good life or a bad life, right? So I have to look at your personality, but if you've got some of 4,000 different personality traits, well, that's not going to help me very much, is it? I have my glasses on and they're not there. A few more minutes. So that's not going to help you, is it? So what they did was they got it down to 5 basic personality traits where almost all other traits can fall underneath these. All right, with the exception of value traits, pretty much, kind of. So let's take a look at those 5 traits. And then this might help you better understand how your personality is related to health. Now, you looked at the personality types, but let's take a closer look at these big 5 is what they're called. They're also called a 5-factor analysis or something like that. But they're basically the same 5, so let's call them the big 5, and everyone will know what you're talking about when you call them the big 5 of personality. All right, and it's kind of fun. So there is openness. Remember what we said. I think I'm doing this in the form of ocean is what I'm doing. So there are some of the facets. So these individuals engage in fantasy. They care about beauty. They focus in on feelings, right? Well, how does that make you feel? They are people who take action, so they get involved in what's going on. They have ideas. They would be considered idea people. They're not one to shut the conversation down. They're one to pick the conversation up. And they also have values, so they stand up for their values. Okay, so that is openness. Again, we're doing this in using the acronym OCEAN, OCEAN, OCEAN. So C, conscientiousness. What behaviors would you expect? These people are highly competent. They are orderly. They make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They do their duties is what they do. So what do we mean by doing their duty? They do their job. So at work, they're the person you can count on. They're the one who gets the extra credit, right? And does the extra credit. They do all their homework. They also are achievement seeking. And so they are looking for other ways that they can do something a little bit more. So remember, type A, hard working is what they are. So they look for achievements. They are disciplined, so they show self-control. Remember what we talked about. That personality wants to have self-control. Why? Because they want to be able to make predictions about what is going to happen. And when they feel out of control, what happens? They get angry. They get angry, right? And then deliberation. They are deliberate about the things that they do. They make lists. They keep their bedrooms and their closets and their drawers organized. They are deliberate about taking their books and making sure that their books go back on the shelf. I'm showing you these books, but you're not seeing all the books that are completely surrounding me, right? I am conscientious, but you probably can know I'm not here on time almost ever. Almost ever, right? So I have conscientiousness. I'm here and not getting paid. What's that? What is that? Right? I'm being conscientious. I'm staying true to my values, right? But values are openness. Let's move on. E, OCE, extroversion. Remember, these have opposites. So if you are not extroverted, you're introversion, you score low on the extroversion. If you are not conscientious, you score low on the conscientious scale. So remember and you're more irresponsible. Remember, there are opposites to these as well. So you have to consider the opposite. If you are not open, you are closed-minded, right? Closed-minded. If you are not conscientious, you are irresponsible. If you are not an extrovert, you're an introvert. What are extroverts? They are gregarious. Gregarious means easy to laugh, easy to talk, easy to be open. They are warm. They are, I don't have my glasses on, assertive is what they are. So they're not afraid to give people their opinion or their ideas. They are active. They get involved like individuals who are open. And now you can see these are the characteristics that extroverts are measured on. But can you see why extroverts may often be also high in happiness and why those measures might be not worded the same, but measuring the same thing? If I'm a warm person, it probably makes me happy, right? If I'm gregarious, I can't be gregarious and be depressed at the same time, right? If I am a person who is sad, I'm not going to tell you my opinions, right? So, or an introvert, so I'm not going to tell you my opinions, but if I'm sad, I'm not going to either. So we can see where happiness can be related to extroversion. The last two there, excitement seeking. I'm sorry, again, I don't have my glasses on. Excitement seeking. We know introverts are much happier being at home reading a book. When I seek excitement, I get excitement, and that can make me happy as well. So we can once again see how happiness can be related to extroversion. And then the last one there, positive emotions. And we absolutely know that actually the key characteristic of both happy individuals and extroverts is positive emotions. Remember what positive emotions do? We talked about the broaden and build, right? We talked about broaden and build. Positive emotions, they give us an upward spiral so that we are experiencing positive emotions even when we don't have a reason to experience them. And of course, that would lead to happiness. Of course, that would be an example of happiness. OCEA, agreeableness. Agreeableness, and there are the facets to agreeableness. So, what are they? I don't know because I can't see them. But I am getting my, there it is. But I am getting my PowerPoint here where I can see it. Okay, so what are the behaviors that you would expect from somebody who is agreeable? You would trust them. They are straightforward with you. All right, straightforward. They are altruistic. That means that they put other people ahead of themselves. It's interesting because they trust, but straightforwardness, because it seems like somebody who is straightforward might be disagreeable, but that actually is to help solve problems, right? If you tell me what the issues are, we can solve problems. So that would be agreeableness. We can solve problems that way. Altruism, putting other people before yourself. Compliance is that you go along to get along, basically. Modesty, you aren't filled with pride. You don't have to brag about what you are doing, right? And get attention for what you are doing. And then you are at least somewhat tender-minded. What does that mean to be tender-minded? What does that mean to be, what do you think it means to be tender-minded? It means that you consider other people. We know that people who are open, for example, to other religions are considered tender-minded. Why? Because they have an ability to put themselves in other people's shoes. They have an ability to show compassion or empathy, right? Empathy. So that would be a great reason why we might see people who are agreeable as being tender-minded. All right, and then the last one there is OCEAN. Neuroticism is being unstable. Of course, we know there's an opposite, which would be stability. It's interesting that we take the positive form for every one of those personality traits, right? Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, if there is a positive to that, there likely is. Agreeableness, but here we've got a negative framework on neuroticism, right? So a negative kind of framework or perspective on neuroticism. I wasn't thinking about how I look, so I was like, and grab my foot and like, I don't even know what I was doing over there. So I had to look at myself for a second. I was looking at the PowerPoint there. Okay, so neurotics are highly anxious. They are angry and hostile. Remember, neurotic means unstable is what that means. So I can't control things. I can't predict. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to have anxiety if I can't control or predict my outcomes. And the more that I can't control or predict my outcomes leads to learned helplessness. And we know learned helplessness leads to giving up, which is due to depression, right? So really, when we're taking a look at depression, probably the first fix would be to learn to be in control, right? To learn to be able to predict your outcomes. How do I learn to be able to predict? Seriously, what are you saying? Learn to be able to predict? What are you exactly saying? That you are putting yourself in circumstances where you can predict the outcome and the outcome happens. So I study for a test, really hard, I get an A. Put yourself in a situation where you can predict the outcome and the outcome actually happens. All right? And so you are learning to make predictions. You are learning to help yourself, right? They are self-conscious. Individuals who are neurotic are always worried about what other people are thinking of them. So they are always conscious of a pimple on their face, or not having makeup on, or not having their nails done, or not having their clothes match, or all of those kinds of things, right? All those worries, it's all part of being anxious. Being anxious and self-conscious means that you feel that the spotlight is always on you and that everyone can see your faults. Impulsive. This means that I act out of desperation, right? I'm always acting from an emotional place. Why? Because my emotions are up and down. My emotions are very unstable. So I'm impulsive, and that leads me to be more vulnerable to stress, right? So when small stressors come here, The neurotic cannot cope. All right, so that's it for today. I have got to get going so that I can get back here on time. At 12:30, we will be back here for our spiritual classroom. All right, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks for joining me. I'm the teacher. You're here in the classroom. Where else would you be? This is the Critical Thinking Classroom. I hope I gave you a lot to think about. Thanks for joining me.